Va Giribaradhare Gopijana Balava Giribaradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopijana Balava Gopijana Balava Giribaradhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Vishnuvad Paramahansa Parivrajakacharis Tadasya Samadhis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Svandracharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Ki Shri Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Sankirtan Yagya Ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to their Samal devotees. All glories to their Samal devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 6. Brahma satisfies Lord Shiva. And we're reading verses 26 and 27, as I understand. I hope so, yes. Okay, 26 and 27. Yes, right. 26 has no purport. I'll just read that myself right now, and then we'll do 27 together. Yayostat snana vibrashta navakunkuma pinjaram vitrishopi pibant yambha payayanto gajagaji. Translation. After the damsels of the heavenly planets bathe in the water, it becomes yellowish and fragrant due to the kumkum from their bodies. Thus, the elephants come to bathe there with their wives, the she-elephants, and they also drink the water, although they are not thirsty. Okay, and verse 27. Tara Hema Maharatna Vimana Shata Sankulam Joshtam Punyajana Stribhir Yata Kam Satadid Ganam Tarahema Maharatna Vimana Shata Sankulam Joshtam Punya Janastribhir Yatakam Satadid Ganam Tarahema Maharatna Vimana Shatasankulam Joshtam Punya Janastribhir Yatakam Satadid Ganam Tarahema Maharatna Vimana Shatasankulam Jushtam punya janastribir yatakam satadid ganam Matajis. Tarahema of pearls and gold. Maharatna, valuable jewels. Vimana, of airplanes. Shata, with hundreds. Sankulam, crowded. Jushtam, occupied or enjoyed. Punyajanastribhi, by the wives of the yakshas. Yata, as, kam, the sky. Satadit ganam, with the lightning and the clouds. Translation: the airplanes of the heavenly denizens are bedecked with pearls, gold, and many valuable jewels. The heavenly denizens are compared to clouds in the sky, decorated with occasional flashes of electric lightning. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The airplanes described in this verse are different from the airplanes of which we have experience. In the Srimad Bhagavatam and all the Vedic literatures, there are many descriptions of vimana, which means airplanes. On different planets, there are different kinds of airplanes. On this gross planet Earth, there are airplanes run by machine. But on other planets, the airplanes are run not by machine, but by mantric hymns. They're also used especially for enjoyment by the denizens of the heavenly planets, so that they can go from one planet to another. On other planets, which are called siddhalokas, the denizens can travel from one planet to another without airplanes. The beautiful airplanes from the heavenly planets are compared here to the sky because they fly in the sky. The passengers are compared to the clouds. The beautiful damsels, the wives of the denizens of the heavenly planets, are compared to lightning. In summation, the airplanes with their passengers which came from higher planets to Kailas were very pleasant to look at. So, I'm going to read both verses again, actually. Yayos tatsnana vibrashta navakunkama pinjaram vitrisho pipibantyampa payayanto gajagaji. After the damsels of the heavenly planets bathe in the water, it becomes yellowish and fragrant due to the kumkum from their bodies. Thus the elephants come to bathe there with their wives, the she-elephants, and they also drink the water, although they are not thirsty. Verse 27. Tarahema Maharatna Vimana Shatasankolam Jushtam Punyajana Stribir Yatakam Satadid Ganam. The airplanes of the heavenly denizens are bedecked with pearls, gold, and many valuable jewels. The heavenly denizens are compared to clouds in the sky, decorated with occasional flashes of electric lightning. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschitya Shatarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Well, just one little point from the previous verse, from verse 26, that when the heavenly ladies from different places actually, not just from Kailash, some of them from Kailash, but others from other heavenly planets, they bathe in the water there in Kailas, and it's just really, really a really amazing experience. The Nanda and Alakananda rivers, they have been sanctified by the dust of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Govinda. And not only that, but some special type of heavenly nature has been imparted to them by the kumkum from these heavenly ladies. Yellowish, fragrant kumkum. Generally, we don't have, well, I don't know, but as far as I know, we don't have experience of yellow kumkum, do we? Anyway. Huh? Red. Yes. Plenty of red kumkum. And not so much yellowish. And fragrant. Fragrant. The kumkum may be fragrant itself. Their bodies may impart some fragrance to the kumkum also. That's possible. So the waters of the Nanda and Alakananda, with all these different features of their nature, they become very attractive. And so the elephants, when the heavenly elephants come with their wives, they drink the water even though they're not very thirsty. You know, sometimes if you're just going to drink, I mean, for some people, if you're just going to drink water, it's not very exciting. You don't drink much. But if you've got some sweet drink, then you may drink quite a bit. Just because it's got a special taste to it. So these things happen. Similarly, sometimes with foodstuffs. If it doesn't taste nice, people may just take a nibble. If it tastes nice, then they may take a lot, even though they might not be particularly hungry. So this is going on there in those heavenly planets. The people who live there, the people who visit there, even the animals, they're very special living entities. And so because of their special natures, and what to speak of the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the dust from his lotus feet. So the whole environment, the atmosphere, and even the actual physical properties, like the taste of the water, the fragrance, everything becomes enhanced and becomes, by our standards, ordinary material standards here on this middle level planet, one of the earthly planets. It's right in the middle of the different levels within the universe, from hellish through to ultimately the planet of Lord Brahma, topmost heavenly planet. So here on this planet, sometimes we get little hints of these things, little hints of heavenly experiences and things like that. And sometimes, definitely, sometimes not just hints, but sometimes some hellish experiences. If people get caught in a war, it's just so hellish, it's amazing. Directly from the hellish planets. And if you're on the hellish planets, how much worse must it be? We read in the last chapter of the 5th canto about the hellish planets. 28, is it? 28, 26 types of hellish planets. And one of them, the particular characteristic is that if your body becomes damaged, it hurts very badly. But if your body gets damaged to the point that ordinarily it would die, your body doesn't die. The experience of pain is just amplified further. Hare Krishna. So, best of course not to dally in this material world, but to get out. Probably we have experienced all these things before, actually. But whether we have or not, we can certainly do without them. And this is the grace of Lord Caitanya, it's the grace of Srila Prabhupada, giving us the possibility, the hope, and a simple practical program for going back to Godhead. So anyway, in the second verse, 27, there's a description of the airplanes, of not just the inhabitants of Kailas, but from various heavenly planets here and there. There are different grades of planets, of course, and on the different grades of planets, there are different grades of material facilities of so many types. Here, of course, as Prabhupada points out, and we're all very familiar, we have airplanes too. But they're not so nice like these ones. I mean, these ones, they're different of them, actually. Our ones, they're run by machine. And they use fuel, which, when the fuel is used, it can't be replaced. I mean, in the sense that you take it from the ground, and the ground then doesn't replace it. Gradually the supply reduces, and from time to time we've seen, at least in the not so distant past, in the 70s, there were whole big outcries because it was felt we're going to run out of petrol. Right now, anyway, like this. So, but in the heavenly planets, when they need airplanes, some of them don't even need airplanes. In the Siddha Lokas, there's some group of planets, as described here, called Siddha Lokas, and the Siddhas. Generally, that indicates they have great mystical power. They can go, what to speak of from here to there, or Durban to Johannesburg, or place to place on a particular heavenly planet. They can go from planet to planet without any aircraft at all. It's really amazing. And they don't need, artificial oxygen supplies on their backs and all that. They just go. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Like Narada Muni. Narada Muni, what to speak of going from one planet to another without any protective equipment or oxygen supply, these types of things, including he comes to this planet. He comes and goes through the air without these different types of devices which are universally used on this planet for that sort of travel. But Narada Muni comes and goes without those things. So, it's amazing. It's really amazing compared to our standards. Excuse me momentarily. And it's something like, at least there's sort of elements of similarity between our experience of flying, including interplanetary flying, at least we hear about, and these demigods, different types of heavenly personalities, and their flying. So there's some similarities in principle there between the similarities between our experiences in doing different things, going in the air, going under the sea, going sometimes very quickly. So our experiences of these types and the experiences, for example, of species like the ants, or just so many animal species, they have their built-in physical capacities, but because they don't have the intelligence of the human beings, they're not able to adapt at all to different environments. Like if they're land-bound, they can't really go under the sea for a long time or fly in the air for long. But humans have been able to adapt at least to some degree to deal with these things. So anyway, yes, from planet to planet, there are different standards for achieving different things. In this case, particularly here, of course, to be able to fly. And they use mantras to fly. That's amazing. Even nowadays, there are people, at least we hear, at least Srila Prabhupada definitely spoke of people who could cure snake bite, like even really serious, like cobra or something even worse, by mantra. Prabhupada talked about that. So different things can be done in different ways, and flying can be done in this mechanical way using petrol or some form, some derivative of oil. But in the higher planets, they just use mantra. And you don't need to, and mantras are sort of, you could say, they're free. So they just fly around just like that. There's also, there is medicine, medical practices on different levels. There are medical practices where they cure even some serious condition, internal condition, where there's some serious malfunction inside. But if people know the science, if they're on that level, they can cure by mantra. And then whatever some growth or lesion or these types of horrible things, then they have a look later and it's gone by the power of mantra. As I've heard, there's 3 levels. One level is through mantra. You can actually change the functioning of the gross material body, even in major ways. Another level is through, you could say different medicines, but we'll say different medicines, including natural medicines if people have the skills. And then, and in that way also, major alterations of the physical structures of people's bodies can be made. And then there's our level, gross level, where you got to cut it open, cut it out, sure, and somehow stick it back, whatever's left back together, and hope for the best. But sometimes it doesn't work, as I found out some weeks ago, and they have to do it again. Krishna, Krishna. So there are different levels, and there are all sorts of implications of the different levels. There are different levels of skills in doing the same things like flying or like medicine. There are different levels of opulence. Like even on this planet in Vedic times, in the times of Lord Krishna at least, it was just common, it was normal practice. Little children, preschool, just, socially inept little children would be decorated with jewelry. And it was completely normal. Actual precious gems. And the parents wouldn't really worry so much, because children being children, they sometimes fight, they roll around, they run around, and children lose things. They might lose some of the jewels, but the parents, it wouldn't be such a big thing because there was such a supply, such availability. So here in the heavenly planets, they have airplanes that can travel interplanetarily and very quickly by mantra, and they are bedecked with pearls, gold, and many valuable jewels. Even when some multi-billionaire has their own private aeroplane, and sometimes they have quite big ones, but there's definitely no pearls, gold, or valuable jewels at all. So the different standards like this. I remember quite some years ago, like several years ago, say, sitting on an airplane in the Johannesburg airport, waiting to take off to come to Durban. And we were on a South African Airways plane, which is white, basically white. Next door to us was, I forget what type, but it was red. I forget which brand, but it was red. And sitting in front of me, in the row in front of me, was a young mother and her very young son. Very young means like 3 or something along those lines. And the little boy is looking out the window, looking at the red plane. And he says, "Mama, I want to go on the red plane." And Mama says, "Well, we're on this plane." Mama, I want to go on the red plane." Okay, next time we'll go on the red plane. "Mama, I want to go on the red plane." And it became a crisis. Because, it was a little more apparently jazzy or attractive. The best decoration they can do is some paint, some more attractive paint type of styling. But these planes, they're decorated with pearls, gold, and many, many valuable jewels. It's really, by our standards, it's just completely amazing. But for them, it's normal, as the verse says. When the airplanes travel in the sky, they look like they're part of the sky. They're compared to the sky. And the passengers are compared to the clouds. It's a very beautiful scene. And not with roaring engines and all this type of thing. Anyway, now of course, here on this middle planet, we are in a civilization of machines of different types. Just the functioning of actual human beings is amplified and adapted in so many cases by them operating different machines. Computers, of course, airplanes, motor cars, and all sorts of technical things, televisions, and all the related infrastructure, etc. We've become a mechanized society, certainly much more than we were when I was a child. When I was a child, at least initially, there was not even televisions. They didn't exist anywhere. If you wanted some entertainment at night, you had to listen to the radio. But now, it's not just televisions, but so vast amount of resources on the internet. And an interesting question, of course, is what next? What next? Who thought of the internet before it existed? But when the next thing comes, which it will come, unless, of course, we wipe ourselves out. But I think, things may get worse. Things will get worse, but I don't think we're going to wipe ourselves out for a while. So there'll be something else. And I read that, I can't remember if it was Prabhupada in a class, but I read that when Arjuna, well, there's one incident, it's particularly described in Mahabharata, it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, but just sort of very briefly. But there was one incident where Agni, the demigod of fire, why exactly I cannot remember, but he decided to incinerate a forest. The Khandava forest. For some reason, he had some reason, he decided to just burn it to the ground, and everything and everyone within it would just simply be burnt to ashes. So he did. So this huge fire, massive, gigantic fire, took place, and even some other demigods, even Indra himself, tried to extinguish the fire. They couldn't do it. They tried to extinguish it, but Agni just got more inspired and made the fire more intense. So there was one demon who was in the forest, and he was going to be burnt. Actually, Mayadanava. Mayadanava's a very famous demon, actually, and extremely powerful in terms of mystic powers. Even Prabhupada, I was reading this morning, Prabhupada says, powers of black magic. Mayadanava had just amazing powers, but he couldn't escape. Couldn't escape from the fire. So it's a bit of a long story, but he turned to Arjuna, and somehow or other Arjuna extinguished the fire and saved Mayadanava. So Mayadanava, Krishna was present. Mayadanava, having been saved by Arjuna, he felt very grateful. And he wanted to reciprocate. So he asked Arjuna, and Yudhisthira was there. Well, he asked Arjuna though, what can I do for you? Please just tell me, and I will do. Whatever's within my power, I'll do. And Arjuna didn't really know what to say. So Mayadanava suggested, let me teach you the science of yantra, the science of machines. Means like highly sophisticated mechanical knowledge to make some just super incredible machinery. So he offered that to Arjuna, but Krishna told Arjuna, don't accept it, because it's demoniac and it will influence you. So don't accept it. So Arjuna did not accept it, and then Mayadanava said, all right, then I will make an assembly house, like a big meeting house for you and for Yudhisthira in Hastinapur, so you can have you more or less heavenly facility for having your gatherings. And he did that. He did that. And it became part of the sort of the setup of facilities in Hastinapur. So, but it's interesting that Krishna told Arjuna, don't accept that knowledge of machines because it'll corrupt you. And we can see in so many ways how the science of machines, which includes all sorts of machines like this little device here, telephones, etc., how it corrupts many people in many ways. Yes. Like just as an example, the internet available, who doesn't have access to a device which can access the internet? But now, all these little children and adolescents and teenagers, they have access to just literally anything. Pornography of the just most extreme, just anything. Violence, multiple sources, different types of violence at an early age. In the old days, well, there were not even pornographic movies, and the war movies and all that sort of thing, they were not like, from what I hear, some of these things are like now, just extreme. So it's all part of the machine culture. Of course, on the other hand, and I was reading this morning different things from Srila Prabhupada about machines. And Prabhupada, on a number of occasions, quite a number, Prabhupada was advocating that we can use machines in Krishna's service. Obviously in certain respects, not just any machine in any way, but we can use machines. And so Srila Prabhupada used a dictaphone, not very advanced by today's standards, but still a very useful machine. Now we talk about the books which Prabhupada has written, but the vast majority he didn't write in the literal sense. The vast majority he spoke. So it's very useful. But I've read a number of times, and I imagine some of you have read how when in, I think, Los Angeles, somewhere in America, Srila Prabhupada was introduced to the telex machine, and you could communicate internationally or anywhere where there's another telex machine and send messages. So in Prabhupada's presence, the devotee sent a message to one other temple that had a telex machine that Srila Prabhupada is here by the machine. And so they sent back a message of greeting to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But at the end of the demonstration of the telex machine, Prabhupada said, you must be careful because you're probably just going to use it for prajalpa. Yeah, just a facility for chatting and, whatever miscellaneous stuff of not great importance. But according to the principle, of course, of using, engaging things, yukta vairagya, engaging whatever's there of the energy of Lord Krishna, then yes, we can utilize, and we should utilize, we must utilize things in Krishna conscious ways in devotional service. And then even these machines can actually be extremely useful. Extremely useful. So, but higher level, well, there is mantra, then there is tantra, and then there is yantra. 3 levels of achieving, doing things. Mantra, the most subtle, just sound vibration. Tantra is also sort of partially subtle, even including, Tantra includes worship. People go to the heavenly planets by Tantra. And then there's mantra. These people are just on the level of mantra. They can do practically anything by mantra. Create people, create beings, create buildings, destroy things just by mantra. And what there was some other thing I wanted to mention, was it? Or maybe this is Kailash. And somewhere I saw, in the word for word of verse 27, Punya Jana Stribi, Prabhupada translates, by the wives of the yakshas, particularly the yakshas, Punya Jana, pious people, Punya Jana Stribi, the wives of the pious, of the yakshas, because they're on Kailash, along with Lord Shiva and his personal associates. You get Kuvera and his associates are the yakshas, and they live there on Kailash or in the vicinity of Kailash. The yakshas live there. And they're punya jana, pious people. Even though, sometimes we hear kind of unusual and not so nice things about yakshas. But they're there, and they spend lots of time, if not living on Kailas, although sometimes they live there, but visiting Kailash, it's sort of like next door for the yakshas. And therefore, they and their wives are being referred to in these, particularly verse 27. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions? Words of wisdom? Loud and clear, because otherwise, yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the class. I wanted to ask you, how do we get through to people who, like you said, we are in this mechanized age and it can corrupt you, right? So how do we get through to people that think that we are advancing because of machines?
Okay.
And there's no use of spiritual life.
Yeah, sure. Well, from my experience with devotees, there are two approaches that different devotees take. One type is to become more expert than the machine people with the machines by, like sophisticated displays and things of that sort, which some devotees do. But the other way for the majority is to point out some of these things, like what's happening to the children. You find amongst the Christians, they regularly, they get so disturbed about how children are becoming polluted. And they are becoming polluted. Some years ago, I know 4 or 5 years ago, I forget exactly, I read something which said that by the time a child comes to some age, some child age, the child has already seen so many thousands of people killed. I mean, maybe actually sometimes literally killed in the news, but at least in the movies and all that, even though they're acting, it's pretty realistic. They've seen thousands of people killed, and they've seen so much illicit sex life directly or indirectly. By the time they reach, I forget what it was, but it wasn't adulthood. It was some childish level age. So if you just go back, to my childhood 60, 70 years ago, it was very rare. It really was rare. So thoughtful people will appreciate that point because it's blatantly obvious, actually. And, it's like Srila Prabhupada. It's a modern day version of Prabhupada pointing out how we're not this body and you suffer, the body leads to suffering. And I mean, of course, we also say that. But in regard to talking about the machines, yeah, things like that. It's a suggestion.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yeah, a lot of people I've spoken to, they think, as children keep them away, but then they think as adults that it doesn't affect them. They think seeing violence or playing violent video games, it doesn't affect them.
Well, it's one of their many mistakes. There's a multitude, ever increasing. Yeah, it contaminates them like mad. And therefore they become violent. They see violence on television or wherever it is on the computer. And in some cases, then they go out and do the same thing. And, they minimize the destructive potency of violence. Yeah, like war. Just, to have a war. But they minimize violence, of different types of violence. The revelations which have been coming and are continuing to come about violence against women. Yeah. It's beyond shocking. It's subhuman. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Oh, a comment from Sweta Dweep, Prabhu. Connaissance.
It's a question. So yeah, thank you again, Maharaj, for such a nice class. So from Hare Krishna, from our side, how we can help to cure this situation? Because like we often hear in America, recently it happened. The teenager, he took the gun and just killed so many innocent people.
It's
like
incredible.
some years ago, I remember there is a pilot, young pilot. He just took the plane with passengers and went right in the Alps. And people were killed. Like we're getting so many kinds of situations due to this. So from Hare Krishna, do we have cure for that? Are we able to help to, because it's difficult, very difficult nowadays.
Yeah, well, what I'd say is Prabhupada has given us, we can use, I mentioned, like creative forms of technological type of preaching that can be done. But the basis, the sort of basic, fundamental form of preaching is to distribute Prabhupada's books and speak to people, but distributing Prabhupada's books is just so important. And if we really continue doing that, or do it more and more and more, it will affect the atmosphere, and it'll affect the people individually and collectively. But that's basically what we have. Like I've read a number of times, and I just read, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks maybe ago, Srila Prabhupada's conversation with, I think it was Tusta Krishna. Anyway, these two sannyasis who had left ISKCON and joined a person called Siddha Swarup. And they were arguing with Prabhupada that in your books, there are things like Maharaj Ugrasena had something, I forget what, some trillions of bodyguards. And they said, well, how can we explain these things to people? And, it's a very interesting discussion, and Prabhupada gets on their case, my gosh. But eventually Prabhupada says that, I can't offer you more than this. Yeah. It's in the Puranas, so, I can't help you with some of these questions. So, of course, we should try to be innovative and creative, to reach people in ways that they'll think, oh, look at that, that's interesting. But the basis will always be to give them, you could say, digestible spiritual Krishna conscious knowledge, which is what Prabhupada was so expert at. Spiritual Krishna conscious knowledge which can just deliver practically anyone, but it's digestible too. It's not some sort of presentation which will just have a very limited audience. Hare Krishna, merci beaucoup. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.